Another edition here of Getting There with Goss, where we talk about the career journeys of athletes, coaches, media members, and business owners from upstate New York. We're heading to Western New York for this one. Brayton Wilson, you know him from a bunch of different spots out in Western New York. We will get to all those places you've heard him before in his career journey, but let's start at the beginning. A younger version of you, 6, 7, 8 years old. For those who don't know, where'd you grow up? What'd you want to be as a kid? And was it that same dream job you wanted when you were 18 years old?
Well, Tom, thanks. First off, thanks for having me on the podcast here. Man, where to even start? So, I guess my journey didn't necessarily start, I think, a lot of places that people would expect. You know, being and working in the Buffalo area, you thought, oh, I'd be, relatively close to Buffalo, going, here and there in the Buffalo area. I actually grew up 35 minutes south of the city of Buffalo in a little town called Collins, New York. Went to Springville Griffith Institute, the biggest school district in like Square Acres or whatever in Erie County. And grew up watching and loving the Bills and the Sabres, and dreaming one day of a life and career in sports broadcasting, primarily as a play-by-play guy. Grew up watching and listening to Rick Jeanneret, watching all the Bills games, listening to Van Miller on the radio, and then John Murphy comes into the picture, I think in 2004. So, growing up, just being a big, huge Buffalo sports fan. And then as time goes on, obviously went to Springville Griffith Institute, graduated the class of 2010. And yeah, from there, I actually started out. I didn't necessarily start in the broadcasting life. I actually went and tried to become a professional baseball umpire down at the Jim Evans Academy of Professional Umpiring. Went to school there for the 5-week program in January of 2011. Didn't necessarily work out. So the backup plan was then to go to college and go into sports broadcasting. And honestly, going to college to do that, it was kind of a journey because I had some ambitions, but I didn't necessarily know which path I wanted to go. I didn't know if I wanted to be like TV, radio, newspaper, magazines, or whatever. And eventually there was a project that I did in my days at Erie Community College where it was a create like your own program or whatever. And I decided to do radio, and I got really involved and did a really fluid job, really nice job. And, that was kind of the kickstart for me, where it was just like, you know what? I think radio is the path I want to go for my career. And here we are today.
All right, I want to get some more Erie Community College stories for sure, but we got to go back to the umpiring stuff because, as you can imagine, you are the first one who has decided post high school to go and try to become a professional umpire. Take us through the thought process behind it. Was there a path? Who are you even following to make this happen? And what was it like having it be evaluated, your performance at such a young age?
Well, I started umpiring probably after my playing days as Little League, and I kept playing into high school, but not as much as I did back in Little League days. But it was a nice little extra way to make a few extra bucks. Games were at that time probably 20, 25, 30 bucks per game. So I figured, you know what? Why not? Let's do some baseball games and have some fun. I got really passionate into it, and at a point I figured, you know what? Let's give it a try. At 19, I decided to go down to Florida, and the program was a 5-week program, and you got the chance to work with people from not only all over the country, but all over the world. There were people there from Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Japan, Taiwan, just people from everywhere coming to this program for 5 weeks. You were living in a hotel, and where we were stationed was just off of the Houston Astros. I think it's their old training facility now, because I don't think they're in Kissimmee anymore, but they were in Kissimmee. And, they had a bunch of other fields there. They had their main field there, their minor league field. And we just got the chance for 5 weeks to work at umpiring, to learn just the way of life and the way to be a professional umpire. And again, it didn't necessarily work out for me. It definitely was an eye-opening experience for me, because I oftentimes have this really bad, guilty thing of just, having these high expectations for what is going to happen, how it's going to go down. And then when I get there to that point, it kicks me right in the butt. And it's just like, well, this is nothing that I expected. So it was a big eye-opening and learning experience for me. And it kind of helped try to teach me, and I'm still guilty of not doing this, but it helped teach me just be ready to expect the unexpected no matter what. Don't go into anything anticipating what's going to happen or how it's going to happen. Always just be ready for a curveball being thrown your way. And, it kind of helps apply into the radio business and the media business nowadays, because you could go into a job expecting, something to happen in a day. And then all of a sudden, boom, just like that, somebody's getting fired, or boom, like that, someone's getting traded. So it's just, you always have to be ready to adjust to the curveballs thrown your way. And that's kind of the learning experience I had. I mean, it was a great experience. I brought back here, and I umpired for another 4 or 5 years locally before I just decided, you know what, I want to get my professional career going in radio. So I stepped away from umpiring. Will I get back to it? I don't know, perhaps maybe one day, but I mean, I'm not in shape for it right now, but certainly we'll hopefully get there at one point and maybe get back into it one day.
You had the international competition you were facing off against in school, but you pursued something. I love the advice you offer, because you went after it. You gave it a shot. It didn't work out. You were young, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with giving something an opportunity, being honest with yourself, and moving on to something else that you could believe can be your career. So when you go post umpire school, were you always thinking about staying local? Were there multiple schools you thought about? Did you always think the community college route was going to be the spot? Let's talk post umpiring school. Why did you decide on Erie Community College?
Well, I mean, first off, I did want to stay local. I preferred to stay in the local region and get into some sort of communications program. On top of that, it was nice and cheap and affordable. So,
Right,
uh,
right.
uh, so you know what? I just went into it thinking, just like, take advantage of whatever situation you can, and you just put your best foot forward and go from there, and just work hard every day, and don't take anything for granted. And also just be humble about every experience that you get. So, going to ECC, again, I went in, and it was just a general communication studies program that they had, and learning the ropes and just getting into certain different aspects, and learning about broadcasting, learning about media production, learning about journalism, all that kind of stuff. And again, the thing that I was really grabbed onto, and I had a little bit of a experience and a little bit of a niche for the radio side of things, because actually, after I had gotten done with the umpiring school, I decided, when I was just starting at ECC, I also decided to then help out in our town's radio broadcast for high school football games. And unfortunately, the radio station no longer exists, but it was a radio station, WSBQ 1330 AM. We did high school football games every Friday. It was me, a guy that graduated actually with my older sister named Jake Earl, and he was a huge influence in kind of like how he gave me a lot of advice on like what to expect going into my Buff State days, and learning that program there. But aside from that, I got the chance to work with him and work with the color guy. Unfortunately, can't remember his name, and I feel bad, but I did stats for them. I did halftime shows for them. So that was like a start for me, kind of getting that experience of doing the broadcasting side of things and getting a real taste for what that's like. And then once I got to ECC, again, it was that one project that I did where I created my own station, and I decided to create a hockey station, an all hockey station that talked about the Sabres, other things in the NHL. And after doing that project, that was really kind of like the spark plug that lit the light bulb on top of my head that said, you know what? I want to do radio for a career. I want to get into the radio business and just do whatever it takes to get into radio. And then obviously from there, I graduated ECC, went to Buff State, and just continue to work hard. From that point, though, I was able to go from just a regular comm studies major to then, yeah, I think it was 4 different things that you could do at Buff State's program for communications. There was the general comm studies. There was a sports journalism angle, I believe. There was a public relations angle, and then there was the media production. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to go media production because I think it covers radio pretty well. It also covers, TV side of things in case I wanted to do that. And it also just allowed me the opportunity to kind of like dip into different things. Comm studies, you think, okay, I could just dip into whatever there. But I felt like in media production, it allowed me to get a better angle and a handle on the behind the scenes stuff, while also being able to really get personal and get fun and interactive on, the hosting side of things or the acting side of things, because, oftentimes it was just like I'd be running the board or running, the editing software or running the cameras that were at college. And there were a lot of people that didn't get that experience, and they were just, I had already had it down. And then the teachers would just be like, all right, we need more people doing this and we need more people getting behind the camera. So I'd be like, all right, I'll get off the camera and I'll go act for people. I'll go perform. And, I enjoyed that kind of aspect of everything.
I'm glad you mentioned the production side of it, because especially we're taping this in September 2022, so many younger students might be looking at the production side and say, no, I want to be a host. I want to be the one mic. I want to run. The fact that, I'll give you credit because it sounds like you were aware of this skill set is going to benefit me at some point in my career. It would have been so easy to say, I'm not stepping behind the camera. I'm not learning this stuff. But you learned quickly, maybe as soon as college, that all that stuff matters, especially when you're trying to find that first professional job, because now you've got that skill set under your belt.
100%. I mean, I think it's so important, not only just to learn the different aspects, but it's fine to have a gradual step process where, okay, I get good at running a board. Great. Then I get good at producing a show. Great. Then I get good at hosting a show. Great. That's awesome. Then I get good at maybe reporting a team or writing articles or whatever. That's great. It's just so important, I think, especially in today's age where you just have to be able to go into whatever field and kind of be a utility player. Can you run a board and run a show? Yes, good. Can you produce a show? Good. That's awesome. Can you report on a team if something happens? Can you be able to go to the locker room, interact with the players? Yep, that's good. Done. Can you host a show in case a host is sick, or in case a host, especially here in Western New York, we get blizzards, we get snowstorms. Can a host not make it? Can you jump in with the other co-host, or can you host on your own? Yep, that's good. I could do that. It all kind of just helps you build up your resume. Not only that, but also just helps build up experience and helps build up those situations where, again, if something changes on the fly, breaking news happens or something like that, you could just immediately step right into action and just know where to go, what to do, and all those other things. And being that utility type of person, especially here, I mean, I've taken pride in that for several years. I still take pride in that, where I could just step in whenever needed or however needed and just fill a role, do a job, and on top of that, have fun doing it. Because obviously, if you love doing what you're doing, you never work a day in your life, right? That's the saying, and that's how it goes. So for me, I love the sports field. I love doing sports. I love working in the sports environment, covering the Bills, covering the Sabres. It's what I wanted to do as a kid, and it's what I loved watching and listening to growing up. So, getting the chance to actually do this and put the foot forward that I have done over the last several years is definitely worth it.
Does it happen that fast post Buff State, where you graduate and find that entry level job at Odyssey, Buffalo, or is there something in between? Take us through what happens post graduation, Buff State, and that first professional job you're able to land.
Well, luckily for me, I was able to land the job right out of my internship here at WGR. I interned, actually, it was funny. I interned right at the height of post Doug Marrone, when he decided to leave the Bills December 2014. And it was when the Sabres were in the middle of their big, giant losing streak of regulation games in the tank year of 2014-15. So I stepped in and I was able to just cover two teams that, quite frankly, were very bad at the time. I mean, the Bills were okay, but they were in a playoff drought, and the Sabres were just putrid. They were terrible. So I did everything that I was asked of and then some, and, just offered my services wherever, however. And eventually, when it came time for the end of my college time at Buff State in May, I got offered a job as a part-timer right off the bat, just filling in, covering, everything from Bison's games to UB football games to some Bills Sabre stuff here and there. But I mean, again, just I offered my services just at that point to do whatever and however, and help out in any way possible. So, I got lucky because obviously I interned and got the chance to get my foot right in the door and get to work doing a bunch of different things right off the bat. So, and it all just happens with timing too. A huge aspect of how everything goes in life is timing. Is there an opening at this time? Is there an opportunity at this time for you to step in and really kind of make yourself known and take that chance to win a job or to earn a position or something like that? And sometimes people get lucky with the timing and other times people don't. And it just happens. It's part of this business. And I know plenty of people that have worked here, interned here, that were happy to get this experience. But then when it came time to the timing aspect, it just wasn't there for them. And then where I come in, it's just like, hey, this opening happened at this time. And then I got a job. And then this happening where, the Matthew Collar, a friend of ours, left the morning show working with Howard and Jeremy. And then I stepped in and got that job as well. Again, timing is kind of a blessing and a curse in this business, no matter if it's radio, TV, newspaper, whatever. If the timing is right, you will get your opportunities. If not, then maybe there's nothing for you there. But I mean, obviously, you just got to keep working at it. You got to keep trying to earn every single dollar, every single minute you get, and just keep trying to work at making it in this business.
As you look back on it, you can humbly reflect on what happened, but I'll give you the credit that you deserve to offer some perspective here. You have the awareness level of, I want to talk about the Bills and the Sabres. These are the teams I grew up with. I know where I want to intern. I know where I want to work. Let's go. Let's email who I have to email. Let's find out if I can get college credit for it. Let's do what's told of me, because there are so many interns, no matter what job it is, whether it's sports radio, whether it's television, whether it's the business field, that if you're not a good intern, you're not going to stick around. But if you're really good at your internship and you do what's told and you find out how people want certain things done, people want you to stick around in the building. The best interns never leave, and you made that happen, and you targeted what you wanted to do. So, and you're good at what you do. Those are three things that I will make sure I give you the love for all that stuff, because all that stuff's important. And to add to one other thing, I know it's your backyard. I know it's your home. I know it's everything that happens there, but we're talking about one of the best radio stations truly in the country. Two professional sports team, passionate fan bases. I got love for Alan Davis. Shout out to him, because he's one of the best programmers in the country, and his resume speaks for itself. Did that stuff even pop into your head of, I know this is GR, I know this is where I want to work, but maybe even looking back at it years now, did you even realize how important that stuff was as you were chasing after it?
That's actually a question I don't think I've ever been asked, just to kind of reflect on on everything that kind of has transpired. Again, just, wanting to get into the radio business when I did, I knew that the cream of the crop in Buffalo was WGR. I knew that the best, and really, I guess, the only route to go for that locally, since I want to stay local. I met my wife here, and we've dated, lived, and everything like that in the Western New York area, and our roots are firmly entrenched in Buffalo, Western New York, and we want to stay. We want to be part of this community. So, looking back, when looking ahead to where I've come from and how I've gotten to here, I definitely try to stay humble every chance that I can get, because certainly I know that there have been other people that have tried to get to this position and couldn't get here. There have been other people that have been in this position, but end up leaving because either A, they weren't happy with pay, or B, other things get in the way. Family life gets in the way, or a personal matter gets in the way. And it just is what it is. And, you do have to realize that a profession like this, there are sacrifices that you have to make. And obviously, my life has been a lot of sacrifices. Certainly there are things that I would have loved to have done that I obviously passed up on, because I decided, oh, hey, let me cover a shift over here to try and get me to point B that I want to get to. Or, I decided to not make a party or not make an event, just because, hey, they're offering, they want help. I'm offering my help. I'm just going to do it because the job has to get done one way or another. And, obviously, looking back, sometimes you think, no, it's worth it. But then there are other times where it's just like, I really do wish I would have been there rather than been covering something that happened that really just was kind of like, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But the point, I guess, that I'm trying to make here is, if you're really passionate about what you want to do, and if you're really, if you feel you're really good at it and really want to try to push yourself even that much more, obviously sacrifices have to be made. And some of them are good sacrifices. Some of them, you will unfortunately regret down the road, but one day, hopefully it'll pay off for you. And hopefully, I mean, I'm hoping it still pays off for me with some of the things that I've decided to do. But, life comes with sacrifices, as does jobs and relationships and everything like that. So you just got to go with the punches. You continue to push forward, and hopefully in the end, it all pays off.
Media members and aspiring media members know what you mean. Just for that non-crowd, I'll make this a little bit easier to decode what you meant by that. When you're working in the morning drive in radio, it's really hard.
Yes.
And you've got to go to bed
Yeah.
really early, and you've got to wake up really early. So I guess we'll just kind of zone in on that. All for that perspective for those who may not know outside of the industry or learning about the industry, those sacrifices you're talking about, basically, for a simpler extent, the schedule and the life you're living at those times.
Yeah, no, working morning drive radio is a chore. Not only are you waking up super early to get into the office, I mean, for me, I still make the 35-minute drive from Springville, New York to Amherst, New York every single day, and then 35 minutes back home. And especially for the morning, I would have to wake up right anywhere between like 3:30 and 4:30 just to make that 35-minute drive to get here in plenty of time to have everything ready to go for the morning show, whether that be for sound cut-ups or updates that I'd have to do. It was a chore. And not only that, but on top of that, on top of being a morning show producer, and at least in my eyes, not only did I have to push buttons and make stuff happen on the air, I also was doing other extra stuff that didn't necessarily entail what I had to do, but I decided to step up because stuff needed to be done. I'd come in and I'd make sure that the website looked good and that it was all edited and it was all user friendly. It was user proportionate and everything like that. There were elements in articles that needed to be there. So I stepped up and did that. I'd grab extra clips for Howard and Jeremy for fun little segments we'd do. I'd run fun segments that we would do. Like we did a segment called Guess the Prospect during draft year, especially when the Bills were about to draft Josh Allen. We did Guess the Prospect, where it was like, hey, this guy went to a Southern California school back in the 80s and was, whatever, and just clues and fun little things that we would do. And oftentimes it was me running that show because I'd have to play the music. I'd have to play the sound bites and have to give the clues and make sure, microphones are working and everything else is working for the show. And, those duties entailed a lot. And especially for me, getting up as early as I did and coming here and again, sacrificing that time and making sure that everything can work in a timely and sound manner. It took a lot, but really rewarding times that I had with both Howard and Jeremy. I worked the show all the way up until November of this past year, when I took an opportunity at WBEN to become a news reporter and to take the news side of things to get, a little different taste of how everything's going. But those 5 years that I worked on the show, 5 years plus, are years that, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of time spent, interacting with those guys, interacting with the Buffalo community, and also doing a bunch of other things that necessarily didn't entail radio sometimes, but so worth it. My time with Howard and Jeremy has been incredible. And there's a lot that I have to thank with those guys because they allowed me the opportunity to not only become a part of their show, but just become a part of them also as well. The things away from radio, the things on the radio, it all just came together. And, both of those guys are a big part of my lives, and they'll be a big part of my lives going forward for the rest of my living days at the very least. And also my professional career.
Much love to those guys. They've been a staple out in Western New York. The show really has a national following because of the strength of the Bills fan base. The Mafia.
And Howard picks the Bills.
That's right. And Howard picks the Bills, which that is an inside joke for people who don't know what that is. I don't even want you to talk about it because I want them to go to your social media page and watch it because it truly feels like, and I hope he takes this as a compliment. I don't know if anyone else can do it besides Howard Simon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if any other market can make that work the way you guys have made that work. And it really feels like you're in a club. And I hope that's a compliment. He knows what I mean by that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the Howard Picks the Bills segment, when I first started, I I saw the potential in what that really could be, because at the time when Howard was doing it, the Bills were frustrating. It was just one of those things where it's like, man, do we really have to pick the Bills? The Bills are just so meh. Like, I'm going to pick them to go 8-8, and then people are going to be really upset with me, or I'm going to go 8-8 and people are going to say, oh, the Bills are terrible. Like, they shouldn't be that high. So, I decided at one point, I was like, you know what, let's have some fun with it. Who cares? And, I'd be creating weekly opens for the show that picks fun at Howard or picks fun at whatever. And I'd have fans that like called the Weiner line when the Weiner line was still in existence. And, calling out Howard for like, oh, I can't believe you picked the Bills to go like 4-12 or whatever it was. And just like, oh, he'd get a kick out of it. Jeremy would get a kick out of it. And over the years, obviously with the Bills getting better, it really started to take off and really started to change the tone from being like hey, let's poke fun at Howard for picking the Bills to, hey, Howard picked the Bills to go 11-5 this year. Now it would be 11-6. I mean, with the extra game, but hey, the Bills are actually doing stuff and Howard's going with it and picking them to win the Super Bowl, picking them to go to the Super Bowl. Like, I mean, just incredible things that, I've taken pride in doing that. And also, there are some people that are still amazed that I actually track the picks with an Excel sheet. I love doing it. I don't know why I started to do it one day, but it just became a thing where I just wanted it to take off more than it already was. And I think it did just that.
I'm a fan of that. And I laugh. You just heard that, Jen. I almost wanted to cut my mic because I'm just laughing away over here because of how much I enjoy that from someone outside of the market following you on social media. It brings a smile to my face. And the reason it works is because of you and Jeremy and Howard and the Bills fans. And people will probably wonder this for years of, could you imagine? It doesn't matter where it is, California to Florida to wherever. Some people who are just football fans wonder, I wonder who that person is who has to take Bills fans calls on a Monday after a loss. That's you. And I know probably like a college, you're right. Like a college class could be taught on this next question, or maybe even science should get involved. How would you describe that, if you can, for us? What a Bills, I'm going to focus on loss rather than win, because I feel like the animation and creativity is far, I could be totally wrong. You tell me if I'm wrong about that. But dealing with, I guess the verb I'll use there, with Bills fans on a Monday morning post-loss.
Post-loss over the years obviously has evolved from a post-loss call back dating to 2016, 2017 to a post-call dating to now. 2017, that was the year the Bills obviously broke the drought. But a lot of the calls then were still just, oh, this is typical Bills until we get a quarterback. This is just, we're going to settle for mediocrity every year, so on and so forth. This team's never going to break their drought. To now, when calls come in after a Bills loss, it's the end of the world. Like, oh my God, this team's not going 13-4 anymore. They're going 6-11. There's no way they're going to make the playoffs. It's just like, oh my God, people calm down. It's one game. I mean, fielding Bills calls has been, oh my God, just, it's been a chore. It really has been a chore. Even fielding Sabres calls over the years, it's not just with the Bills, it's with the Sabres. With how bad the team's been over the years, it feels like a chore fielding calls. But I was always taught. I interned with a producer named Tom Sitch, and Tom was a great producer. I learned a lot of things on how to act by producing, and it's okay to be creative, and a different bunch of things that make the job more fun, make the job more interactive, and everything like that. And just the one thing he always taught me was, when screening phone calls, don't be afraid to be an a-hole. Don't be afraid to kind of be a jerk to some of these callers, because, some people want to call in and they just expect to get on. They expect their voice to be heard. And sometimes it's just like, no, it's okay when you're screening phone calls. It's okay to tell people no. It's okay to tell people like, yeah, no, we're not taking that on the air. We're not going to take your call on the air because of that take. And then there will be some people that will call back 3 or 4 different dozen times, just like, okay, how's this take? And it's just like, no, you're not getting on the air with any of your takes. And again, like, you obviously don't want to tell people to turn them away and say no, but there are just some times where you just think like, okay, I don't feel comfortable with you going on the air. So the point of a call screener and the point of, kind of that person that's in the middle there between your message and getting it on the air, if you don't feel comfortable with it, it's okay to be an a-hole and say, no, you're not getting on the air. Or, however you want to go about it. You could just say, all right, I'll pass it along. Thanks. Hang up on them. Or there are some people that you just sit on hold, and then they'll call back. Oh, hey, I sat on hold for 2 hours. What gives? Sorry. I don't know what to tell you. It is what it is. It's a tough job. And I get it for some people. It is really tough because you're not necessarily knowing how to interact with certain people, whether or not they're being serious. I mean, Bills fans on a Monday is one thing. Bills fans on a Sunday after the game is a whole nother level of, oh my God, what am I doing? It's because you're dealing with Bills fans that are drunk. You're dealing with Bills fans that are like way hyped up on emotion after a game, whether it's a win or a loss. And I didn't even screen this phone call, but I know that there was a guy that called after the one preseason game. I think it was the Bills Broncos game. And the guy said, oh man, I really like this Casey Keenum guy, getting Case Keenum's name wrong. But, I really like Casey Keenum. I think the Bills should trade Josh Allen and try to keep this guy and build around him. And I literally wanted to throw my shoe through the freaking radio at this guy. It's just one of those things where it's like, I'll give the benefit of the doubt to the producer because it has happened to me before where you screen a phone call and you're just kind of like, okay, they say one thing which makes sense, and then they just go on the air and then just decide, screw it. I'm just going to let the hottest of takes go flying out there, and we're going to roll with the punches and see where these hosts take it. And oftentimes the hosts are just like, okay, thanks for the call. Here's Bob in West Seneca. Bob, you're on the air. Go ahead. Just like completely ignoring the take because it's just so bad. But yeah, Bills fans, I mean, listen, as much as some are insanely passionate about the team and as some, you don't take the phone calls because they're so radical or whatever, Bills fans are truly one of a kind. There's no fan base that I've interacted with more than Bills Mafia, but that just so passionate about the team and they live and die by the Bills. I mean, I don't know how some other fans are, but I've talked to certain people and in other fan bases, and every time they even tell me, it's just like, Bills fans are always just so crazy. They're so passionate about the team. And it's just the small marketness of the Bills because they are one of the smallest market teams in the NFL. I think the Packers are number one. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the Packers are one and the Bills are number two or number three. Small market teams are that much more passionate about their teams compared to the bigger markets. And when that is the case, you're going to get the more diehard fans. You're going to get the more fans that are more willing to express their feelings, their personal feelings deep from the heart. And it just is what it is. But, Bills fans, I love Bills fans. I love Bills Mafia. There have been some interactions where I just shake my head and I just literally, again, want to throw my shoe through a radio or through a wall or whatever. But, there's no better fan base than Bills Mafia out there in football, period.
Producing shows and more so screening phone calls is a lost skill for so many young broadcasters because there are so many radio stations that will never do it again. They just will stop taking calls. If you're coming through the podcast format, non-traditional media, you may never take a call in the history of your podcast. You might obviously interact on social media where you can control that content. And you offered the great example. If you're in that producer chair, your call screener chair, and the caller goes rogue and they just take you to the depths of hell with the hottest of takes.
Yeah, right.
I always felt a sense of guilt. Like I had done something wrong. Like, oh my God, I just put the host in a horrible spot, but it's not your fault, but you're like, oh, well, I did hit one on that one and they just decided to go rogue, but it's a skill set I hope never ends in Buffalo. Please. Like GR and everybody out in Western New York, if at one point, Howard, Jeremy, whoever, if it just becomes a digital thing and you just take 90 minutes of Bills calls on a Sunday and Monday, and it just gets posted on the web, and there's not even a host. It's just a continuous take after take. There you go. Send that over to Alan Davis. That's a God suggestion right there. Whatever happens, whatever's even allowed on the air. I know you're with WBEN now, And it's always one of these awkward parts of the interview because it's currently your employer and you're there now. So say as much or as little as you want. We won't judge you how you handle this. You teased it a little bit through that transition from GR to WBEN and how that ended up. And again, as much or as little as you want because they are signing your paychecks.
Right. So the transition over to WBEN was one of those where Tim Wenger, who's our program director, he was kind of in a bit of a bind. He was losing one of his news reporters, and a longtime news reporter. He took another job somewhere, and so he had just passed it along to me and just said, "Hey, we figured this would be a good avenue for you to take since you have experience reporting with Bills and Sabres stuff. Give it a thought, see where it goes, and so on and so forth." So I said, "Okay, I'll give it a thought. Let's give it a trial run." Well, the trial run probably lasted, I'd say, about a week or less because next thing you know, the other reporter that was on the news team also announced that he was leaving. He took a job somewhere else. So then it went from leaving the news department with 2 solid news field reporters to 0. So at that point, it was just kind of like, how do you feel making this move full time? And I said, well, I guess so. I guess I'm more than willing to help out and lend a hand if necessary. So, it was one of those just like, okay, good. We'll take it this year. We'll see how it goes. And then after a year, we'll evaluate kind of where we're at and with everything like that. So, I took over in November, I guess, officially, unofficially. I'm not sure how that goes, but I think the full year mark will just come by like December 31st of this year to see how that goes. But no, I mean, it definitely was a bit of a transition for me, just because obviously going from a sports life entirely to doing a bunch of different things to now mainly just serving as a news reporter, covering a bunch of different news happenings that's happening in Western New York and in Buffalo. And, it has allowed me to dip into the sports field. I mean, like one of the things I just recently did as of, September or whatever today is, the 6th, September 6th, I just got off the phone hours ago with the president of the Los Angeles Bills backers talking about the excitement of having Bills Mafia flood Los Angeles for a week. So, it's allowed me to stay in the sports field for a way. And it's also allowed me to get a grasp of kind of everything else that happens in Western New York, whether it's covering court stuff. I mean, obviously the happenings with the mass shooting that happened at the Tops on Jefferson Avenue this past May. I've been down there so many times. I've talked to so many people about happenings with that and court cases with the accused shooter. Just a lot of things has been thrown at me over the course of a year of being in the news. And it's at times it's been completely overwhelming. And at times, again, I just try to keep that mentality and philosophy of just, you adjust with what comes your way and you adjust on the fly. And sometimes it's been a lot, but other than that, it's been a very humbling experience. It's been an eye-opening experience. And, I'll admit I miss the sports field. I really miss it. I miss working at GR and having the relationship that I did with the people that I worked with over at GR. But obviously with the news side of things, obviously, hopefully it'll continue to go relatively well for me with obviously the hope of going back over and jumping back into the sports field eventually. But obviously with having a little bit more of a background with news and experiencing that and kind of bringing that mentality then eventually over to the sports field, which will then hopefully in turn make me a much more well-rounded personality or a well-rounded worker that allows me to cover a bunch of different things. I mean, again, as I said earlier, I take pride in being the quote unquote utility player for somewhere like WGR or even for WBEN. So if I could take this and go back into the sports field and be even that much more of a utility player with being able to do that much more, that I would take so much more pride in and just really, really be humbled by and also just take pride in it.
It's a huge compliment that within that building, they said, we know he can do this. We're going to let him do this. And he's having success doing it. So it shows to your credit and your skill set. I don't know if you've said that term. I've said that term a few times now of what you're able to do, man. So keep crushing it over there. I know you've done this a little drop here and there throughout the episode, but for a young person, whether they're at ECC, whether they're out in Western New York, upstate New York, wherever it might be, what's the best advice you can offer these aspiring broadcasters to get where you are to your career right now?
There again, as I mentioned throughout this whole podcast, there's been different tidbits here and there, but I would say that best advice I would give is, always be humble. I think that's the first thing, is always be humble with what you've got and what you're doing, just because, you never know when things change on a dime and things all of a sudden go haywire for you. It's, be humble with who you are, where you've been, where you're going. I think that will help you stay grounded in this situation, especially because, I mean, obviously for me, I try to stay humble everywhere I go, but like when I was getting the chance to start covering more Bills Sabres stuff, like I'd be going in the press box and I'd be seeing like Rick Jeanneret and some of the other news guys that are covering the team, and it's like, oh, this is really cool. Like this is a really, really fun experience. Like, but like at the same point, it's like, okay, like simmer down, calm down. You're here to do a job, and just go with it. Just do your job. And you have to set aside the fan side of it, which is really tough. It took me so long to set aside me like getting up and cheering when the Sabres score a goal or the Bills score a touchdown, to all of a sudden just being like, okay, they scored a touchdown, get the job done, write up your paper or write up your article or whatever it is that you have to do. It took me a while to transition from being that fan to being, kind of being serious about it and just getting the chance to cover the team or whatever. Even when I go to games with my wife nowadays, like something happens and beforehand I'd be like jumping out of my seat. Yeah, they scored. And now I'm just like, I'm sitting there and I'm just like, wow, that was a really nice goal. Just really, really going from like level 10 to level 3. But, again, I don't mind doing that. It's something that I've kind of just grown into that mentality and just gone with it. But other than that, other than being humble, when you're getting into it, never be afraid to take a shot at doing something. If you really have the passion to do what you want to do, take a shot, ask about it and see if you could do it and see if you can fill in or just like sit in with people. The more people you get the chance to interact with and network with and know, the better off you're going to be in the long run, just because, hey, I know this guy from this outlet or whatever. So like after you get done with college, then you could reach out to them and say, hey, are there any openings here? Or, do you know anybody that has openings that I could be able to get help with and try and apply somewhere? Networking is such a huge aspect with it. And whether that's through interning or even working with other people, the more people, the more help that's going to get you down the road and help you get to where you want to go in the end. So, and the more chances you take and the more opportunities that you get the chance to experience, whether it is covering a baseball game, covering a football game, a hockey game, a curling event or something like that, anything that you could do to kind of dip your feet everywhere and get yourself immersed in different fields, different sports, different events, I think goes a really long way to help you grow and understand everything a little bit more, whether it's from a sports side of things or news side of things, and it's something, again, I'm still learning every day. It's just, don't anticipate anything. Don't ever, go into a day thinking that, this is going to happen A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then I'm going to go home and enjoy the rest of my day with, my dog, my wife, my cat, whoever you live with or whatever. So, it's tough because you want to pre-plan everything. And for me, especially living 35 minutes outside of work, driving up here, going about my day, and then eventually just like, oh, I don't know what the heck's going to happen. You just have to go with it in stride. And it's tough. It's a lot of stressful, gruesome days where you want to like punch a wall or just bawl your eyes out sometimes. And I've had those days. I've had those days where I get done and I just feel drained emotionally, physically. But if you really have the passion for it, if you really have the will to keep going and keep doing what you're doing because you love it, whether it's sports, news, or whatever, you just go with it. You go with the punches and you just go day by day dealing with what comes your way. And eventually, and I'm still hoping for my sake, it happens this way, but eventually it will make you not only a stronger person, but it'll also make you a better professional. It'll help you just continue to make the step up to where you want to go eventually, whether that's hosting or being a program director or a general manager of a business or whatever it is. You just keep rolling with the punches. You take in that experience, you try to soak in everything that you can get and you learn, and it makes you a better person down the road.
Very well said right there. And also, I noticed that curling reference. It's a nice tease for a past episode of Getting There with Gossip where somebody did curling and now works for CBS Sports. So go check out that one as well.
That's interesting.
That's very good stuff right there. Brayton Wilson, I'm so glad we got to do this. We've been connected sporadically over the years. I told you when I first met you, I said, we're going to stay connected. There's something about our mindset, our past, that we're not going to be done with each other quite yet.
Right.
Who knows where the world's going to take us months and years from now. So I'm glad we got to reconnect. Let's stay in touch for the future. Keep crushing it out there in Western New York, man. Looking forward to following your coverage this fall and more Howard picks the Bills segments and everything else you got for us on WBEN, man. Thank you for doing this.
Tom, thanks again for having me on, and best of luck with everything you're doing here.